The air in the Silicon Valley boardroom was thick with the scent of failure. It was a sterile, air-conditioned failure, but failure nonetheless. Leo, once hailed as a visionary, could taste the bitter tang of it on his tongue. The holographic charts flickering before him didn't display growth trajectories or user acquisition spikes, they were autopsy reports for his dream. The investors, men and women he'd once called partners, now looked at him with the cold, clinical pity reserved for a terminal patient. "The numbers don't lie, Leo," one of them said, his voice a low, sympathetic murmur that did little to mask the finality of the statement. "Without another round of funding, well, the servers go dark next week." Leo's world, a world built on lines of code and audacious ambition, was crumbling. He wasn't just bankrupt financially, he was bankrupt spiritually. The fire that had once roared within him was now a pile of cold, dead ash. He drove home through the neon-lit streets of San Francisco, but the city's famed energy felt like a taunt. His apartment, a minimalist box with $1 million view he could no longer afford, echoed with a profound silence. In a fit of desperation, he began to pack, to do something, anything. From a forgotten drawer, an old, sepia-toned photograph fluttered to the floor. It was of his grandfather, a man he'd barely known, standing before a breathtaking Himalayan vista, a smile of deep peace on his weathered face. Scrawled on the back, in his grandfather's elegant hand, were words Leo had never truly noticed: "When the world becomes noise, find the silence where all answers reside. Seek the sage of the valley, not for what he will give you, but for what he will help you remember." It was a cliché, a threadbare plot from a bad movie. But Leo was out of options. With the last of his credit, he bought a one-way ticket to Delhi. Days later, he found himself in a dusty jeep, lurching up a treacherous mountain road, leaving the world of algorithms and venture capital far below. The air grew thin and crisp, scented with pine and distant snow. The frantic rhythm of his thoughts began to slow, not by choice, but forced into quietude by the overwhelming, majestic presence of the ancient peaks. He arrived in a small village, a cluster of stone houses clinging to the mountainside. The locals, when he asked about a sage, simply smiled and pointed a finger up a narrow, winding footpath. And so Leo climbed. His city-soft lungs burned, but a strange pull kept him moving. Finally, he reached a small, simple ashram overlooking a valley so vast it seemed to swallow the sky. He was met not by a wizened old man in robes, but by a man who appeared to be in his late 50s, with a calm, powerful presence and eyes that held a disconcerting depth. He moved with the quiet efficiency of a scientist, not a mystic. He introduced himself as Ravi. I was told to find you," Leo began, his voice raspy from the climb and thick with skepticism. "My grandfather." Ravi held up a hand, not with impatience, but with the grace of someone who listens to more than words. "You were not sent to me by your grandfather, Leo. You were sent by your pain. And pain is the universe's most potent invitation to grow. Come. You have been chasing wealth in the external world. It is time to learn of the internal treasure map." Over a cup of spiced tea that seemed to warm his very soul, Leo spilled his story: the rise, the fall, the crushing weight of debt and disappointment. Ravi listened, never interrupting. When Leo finished, exhausted, Ravi said, "You believe your problem is a lack of money. It is not. Your problem is a lack of consciousness. You are trying to change the printout without reprogramming the computer. You are trying to change your world without changing yourself." "My consciousness?" Leo retorted, the old frustration flaring. "With all respect, my consciousness doesn't pay bills. I need a strategy, a tactic, not philosophy. Ravi's smile was gentle. What if the most powerful strategy in the universe is the rewiring of your own mind? Let me tell you a story. A parable of two seeds. He leaned forward, his voice taking on a melodic rhythm. A farmer had two seeds, identical in every way. He planted one in a small, rocky pot with poor, dry soil. He planted the other in a large, open field, with deep, rich, fertile soil, abundant sunlight, and a steady supply of water. The first seed, despite its innate potential to become a giant, sprawling tree, struggled. It became a stunted, weak, and brittle plant, its leaves pale and sparse. It lived a life of lack, constantly fighting for mere survival. The second seed grew into a magnificent, strong tree, abundant with fruit, offering shade and shelter to all. It lived a life of plenty. The seed, Ravi said, his eyes locking with Leo's, is your potential. The soil is your paradigm, the mental soil of beliefs, thoughts, and feelings in which you have planted yourself. You, Leo, have been living in the rocky pot of a scarcity paradigm. You must uproot yourself and replant your mind in the fertile soil of abundance. This is the first law of the mind. Your outer world is a reflection of your inner world. This was Bob Proctor's wisdom, though Leo didn't know it. It sounded deceptively simple. But it was the first crack in the dam of his disbelief. The days turned into weeks. Leo's training began not with complex financial formulas, but with silence. Ravi called it, becoming the mental sculptor. Most people believe their brain is hardwired, Ravi explained as they sat by a murmuring stream. They believe their personality, their habits, their luck is fixed. This is the greatest lie ever sold. Neuroscience reveals the truth of neuroplasticity. Your brain is malleable, like clay. Every thought you think is a sculptor's tool, carving out new neural pathways. You are not a prisoner of your past, you are the architect of your future. You must pick up the chisel of disciplined thought and begin to carve the statue of your future, wealthy self out of the marble of your old mind. The tool for this sculpting was meditation. But not just any meditation. Ravi taught him a specific practice. Most people meditate to quiet the mind. That is good. But we meditate to create the mind. We will use the theater of your own imagination to rehearse your new reality. Each morning before dawn, in the profound silence of the Himalayas, Leo would sit. He would close his eyes and, as instructed, begin to mentally sculpt his day. Not as a hopeful wish, but as a vivid, multisensory experience. He would visualize checking his bank account and seeing a specific, abundant number. He would feel the leather of the chair in a new, prosperous office. He would hear the congratulatory handshakes of partners, smell the fresh paint of a new home. Most importantly, Ravi insisted he generate the emotion of already having these things. The feeling of gratitude, of freedom, of joy. The thinking of your new self is the first step, Ravi would whisper. But the feeling of your new self is the magnet. Your feelings are the language you use to speak to the universe. They are the energy that broadcasts your order to the quantum field. The quantum field? Leo asked one evening, as the stars blazed with impossible clarity overhead. Ah, Ravi said, his face lighting up. This is where science and spirit dance together. All modern physics tells us that beneath the illusion of solidity, we live in a vibrational universe of pure potentiality. A quantum field of infinite possibilities. Every outcome, wealth, health, happiness, already exists as a potential wave in this field. Your job is not to chase it. Chasing implies it is running away from you. Your job is to become a vibrational match for it. He picked up 2 tuning forks. He struck one and held it close to the other. Soon, the second fork began to hum in perfect sympathy, emitting the same note. See? Ravi said. It is not trying. It is simply matching the vibration. This is your work. You must elevate your internal state, through gratitude, through joy, through the feeling of abundance now, to match the vibration of the wealth you desire. You must, as I often say, dress for the party you haven't been invited to yet. You must feel wealthy now to attract wealth later. The quantum field is not a respecter of persons, it is a respecter of vibrations. This was the essence of Joe Dispenza's teaching, woven into a timeless metaphor. Leo began to understand. His morning ritual, which Ravi called his hour of power, became the cornerstone of his days. It was a sacred synthesis. He would start with Proctor-like incantations, powerful declarations spoken with emotion to reprogram his subconscious. I am a magnet for abundance. Wealth flows to me easily and effortlessly. I think and speak only of prosperity. Then he would move into Dispenza-style meditation, sinking into the quantum field, visualizing and, crucially, feeling his future into existence. The change was not immediate. Old paradigms die hard. Waves of doubt would crash over him. Fear would whisper its familiar lies. But Leo persisted. He was sculpting. He was tuning his instrument. And then, Ravi introduced the final piece. All of this internal work is essential, he said. But it is not complete without the alchemy of action. You must meet the universe halfway. The quantum field will deliver opportunities, ideas, whispers of intuition. You must learn to listen for them and then act with precision and faith. This is not frantic, desperate action born of fear. This is inspired action, born of alignment. It will feel calm, certain, and surprisingly effortless. One morning, during his meditation, a crystal-clear idea downloaded into Leo's mind. It wasn't about his old failed company. It was a simple, elegant solution to a logistics problem he'd heard a villager complaining about days before. It was a small thing, insignificant in the grand scheme of global tech. But it felt different. It felt inspired. He mentioned it to Ravi, who simply nodded. The field speaks. Will you listen? Leo spent the afternoon sketching out the idea. He used his tech background to design a simple, low-tech system. He shared it with the village elder, expecting nothing. A week later, the elder found him, beaming. The system worked perfectly, saving them time and money. He insisted on paying Leo a small sum, a token of gratitude. It was less money than Leo had ever charged for an hour of consulting, but it felt like $1 million. It was the first fruit from his new tree. It was evidence. This began a cascade. Another idea, this one about a niche software application, emerged during his meditation. He felt that same calm certainty. He wrote the code on Ravi's old laptop. He emailed it to a former colleague, not as a plea, but as a gift. The colleague was astonished. It solved a critical problem they were facing. They offered to buy it. The sum was substantial. Leo was no longer visualizing. He was actualizing. He had become a vibrational match. The quantum field was responding. The climactic moment came not with a bang, but with a profound inner silence. He was in a deep meditation, feeling the feelings of his future self, the freedom, the peace, the purpose. Suddenly, there was no more separation between the visualizer and the vision. He was that abundant man. He was the tree, not the seed. In that quantum moment, a circuit closed in his mind. A paradigm shattered. His phone, which had no service for weeks, chose that moment to chime with a delayed flurry of messages. One was from an old investor, who'd heard, through the grapevine, he was working on something new and wanted to talk. Another was from a major tech firm, making an unsolicited offer to acquire the carcass of his old company for a sum that would clear all his debts and leave him with a life-changing surplus. He showed the messages to Ravi, not with exhilaration, but with a deep, quiet peace. The wealth was welcome, but it was merely the confirmation slip. The real prize was the peace, the understanding, the rewired mind. It was time to go home. On his last day, he stood with Ravi on the same ledge where he had first looked out over the valley. The view was the same, but he was different. The rocky pot of his mind had been replaced by the fertile field. "Remember, Leo," Ravi said, his voice soft on the wind. "The wealth code was never about money. Money is simply an echo, a shadow cast by the substance of your consciousness. The code is about remembering who you truly are. An infinite being with the power to think, to feel, to sculpt, and to vibrate your world into existence. Do not manage your time. Manage your energy. Do not chase success. Embody significance. The world will try to pull you back into its noise. Your practice is your anchor. Your hour of power is your sanctuary. Return to it every day, and you will never lose your way." Leo returned to San Francisco. The city looked the same, but he saw it with new eyes. He paid his debts. He didn't rush back into the frantic pace. He first established his sanctuary, his morning ritual. He became the mental sculptor, the vibrational match. The opportunities continued to flow. He started a new venture, not from a place of desperation, but from a place of purpose. It grew with a graceful, effortless ease that stunned his peers. He became known not just for his success, but for his peace, his generosity, his clarity. One evening, he found himself in a sleek, high-rise boardroom. The same city lights glittered below. But he was not the same man. He was not there pleading for funding. He was there as the mentor, the sage. A young, frantic entrepreneur, his eyes burning with the familiar fire of fear and ambition, was laying out his desperate numbers. Leo listened, seeing his old self in the young man's face. When the man finished, Leo leaned forward, a calm, knowing smile on his lips. "You believe your problem is a lack of money," Leo began, his voice quiet yet filling the room. "It is not. Your problem is a lack of consciousness. Let me tell you a story. A parable of two seeds.